Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We do a couple of webinars a month, and some of them are introductions to ClubExpress for those people that are either new to ClubExpress or evaluating association management solutions. And we do some new version announcements every couple of months, and most of our webinars are about individual functions or roles that people have. And today we're doing sort of a hybrid. We're not going to be talking about an individual function like documents or forms or whatever, but we're going to be talking about what you need to do to manage your titles, contacts, and administrators. But before we get into that, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. All of the phones and microphones are muted, so questions should be entered into the chat window, and Samantha will be answering questions as they come along. And at the end of the demonstration, we will revisit the chat window to see if there's anything that has not already been answered. And this is particularly useful for those of you that are viewing this after the fact as a recording. And speaking of recordings, all of the webinars and tutorials are recorded, and the way you can get to the recordings is by going to clubexpress.com, clicking on the Cool Stuff link, then on the webinars tab, and you'll see the upcoming webinar schedule and a list of recent webinars and webinars by topic. And above the webinars tab, there's a video tutorials tab. So you can click on that and see some of the recent videos. And again, there's another list that sorts them by control panel tab. All of our videos are actually housed on YouTube. So you can go and search for ClubExpress on YouTube. And if you click on the subscribe button and then optionally on the notification bell, you can be notified whenever new content appears. So let's talk about titles and contacts and administrators and such. It has been said that the only thing that is constant is change. What happens is we send out these reminder emails to people about upcoming webinars. And when we do that around the first of the year for our January webinars, we get a lot of responses saying, I'm no longer with this organization. My contract ran out in December, and please contact somebody else. That's fine. But that was because these people were still listed as administrators. So I thought it was a good idea to come up with an overview to show how you would change administrators and coordinators and such, and why you might need to do it. So sometimes you need to just change your contact information because the office moves, or you change your mailing address. And as I mentioned, contacts, which may or may not be administrators or office staff, come and go over time. When somebody leaves an organization or comes into an organization to replace somebody else in their role, it's worth reviewing the permissions that were granted to that person. So if an administrator for the club leaves the organization, then the remaining administrator should remove that person and perhaps assign them permissions to somebody else. And just so that people that are new to ClubExpress, administrators are the people that can change everything. They can manage people and money, and they administer everything on your ClubExpress site. Coordinators are administrators of particular functions. And it may be you have somebody who's a coordinator of the people module or a coordinator of the documents module, or you could actually assign coordinators to particular things. Like you could have somebody who's allowed to manage a particular web page. You might have someone that's managing all web pages, but you may say, well, here's a particular page about a particular activity, and we want Sally to be able to just manage that one. And it's also, when office staff comes and goes, it's also a good time to review any email forwarding that has been set. One of the ways that most people will contact you is via the Contact Us page. And it provides a standard way for members and visitors to contact the club. And the other thing about having certain contacts, particularly those with certain titles, is that certain club officers, like the membership chair or the president or the webmaster, may get notified when certain events or activities occur. So these are the kinds of things that are important to note. So as you have people coming into and going out of different roles, or as your organization moves and changes address, these are the kinds of things that you'll want to update. Now, I'm going to try to keep this at a fairly high level because it turns out there's a lot of detail, and we have tutorials that go into virtually all of these things. So I'm trying to give you an overview here. And so it's going to be a lot of talking on my side here. And Samantha will chime in when she has something to add, because she does a lot of the training. And so there are things that she sees over and over again, and she's got some best practices and tips that she'll chime in with. First, we're going to start with the Contact Us page, and then we will look at some club options. We'll check in on the club name and description. We'll look at the titles module, where we're going to view and add titles and look at some of the roles that are there. Then we'll look at the contacts, and these are the people that are going to show up on your Contact Us page. Then we'll talk a little bit about general assigning of permissions, whether it be assigning coordinators or administrators. And very often there are more than one way to do things in ClubExpress. So you could add coordinators via the control panel configuration tab, or you could go to individual modules. Like on the club tab, you can assign administrators and coordinators. On the website tab, you can assign coordinators to particular custom pages and photo albums. On the people tab, you can assign coordinators for individual interests. In the people options, this is where you would decide whether or not your membership director gets an email every time somebody is added as a new member or renews, and you have some options there. And then on the communications tab, we'll have email, account forwarding, and discussion forums and things like that. And then Samantha is going to chime in with some tips and tricks about titles, coordinators, club name and check payments, and the website security report. So what we are looking at right now is the Northwest Balloon Club. It's one of our demo clubs. It's not a real club, but we use this for a lot of our training and such. And we've put the Contact Us onto the menu. Contact Us is also available on every one of your pages at the bottom where it says Contact Us. So it's in the footer all the time. So in either event, I am currently not logged in. You can tell because it's asking us for a login here. But if I click on Contact Us, what we've got is this page here. It says Contact Us, and it's got club information. So I want to show where this stuff is entered. So we've got the address, the phone number, and fax number, for those who still have a fax. We've got club contact. So the administrators said that certain titles will appear on the club contacts page. And you'll see that some have an email address, some don't have an email address. And something to note here is that although this is text, so I can actually select this, this is not text. This is actually a graphic of the email. And the reason for this is because we're not logged in. The developers at ClubExpress said, we really don't want screen scrapers to be able to pull down this Contact Us and start picking up emails. So you'll see when we log in, that changes to a live link. So this is a picture of an email, but not a live email. Now, if somebody wants to send an email, they could create an email, or they could fill in their name here, and they can fill in their email address, and they can pick from some email addresses that are available to the public. So over here, you'll see that the president and the data protection officer have said, I want to make my email available, but there's also this general information, which is not shown because you don't have to have these other ones. And so if somebody sends you to the general information, that will go to, we'll call it the main email that's set up in one of the modules, and you'll see that in a few minutes. So if they click on general information, or they want to send it to any particular person here, they put in a subject, they put in a message, they put in send email, and it sends it out to that appropriate person without them necessarily knowing the email address, say, for the general information. Now, one thing that's very important is that make sure your members know this, that if you have any website technical support need, like if you have trouble logging in, or you're trying to make a payment or renewing your membership, not only can you as administrators and coordinators contact ClubExpress, but any of your members can contact ClubExpress. And that's why this is hanging out on the bottom of every page. Every page has our toll-free number and the email address, and our customer success team are very, very good and will help your members. So it takes a lot of the support work off of you. If they're just having some difficulty with something, they can give our customer success team a call and they'll help them out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as a member. Now, this member happens to be an administrator, but if we look at the page now, you will see that not only are these now live links, they're not pictures anymore, these are live links, but Mike Jones, his email address is displaying. And when I pull down this list here, now we have Mike Jones displaying here. That's because we decided that we want to make this email available only to members. And because I'm logged in, it already knows who I am, so it filled in the email address. So these are very easy way for people to contact you and your organization. So let's see where some of these things are set up. So I'm going to go, because I'm an administrator, I'm going to go to the control panel. And if I go to the club tab, now this club tab may not say the word club. It might say association. It might say theater. It might say chamber. And we'll show where that's set in a moment. And so if I go to the club options, this is where we set that keyword. So if I changed it from club to academy, now the word up here is academy, and down here it no longer says club options, it says academy options. I'm going to change it back to club. So that's number one. And here's where you also give the keyword for the organization, what you want to call your secondary members or tertiary members, because you may want to call them partners, you may want to call them children, whatever you want to call them. So it's save that. So that's where you set that option. Then staying on the club tab, there's one for name and description. So name and description is where you enter your basic information, the name of the club, the short name, which would be, in this case, democlub.clubexpress.com, although you may have it linked to your own domain. This is where you would put in your phone number. And this first email address here, that's the one that if somebody said, I want to send you general information, that's the one it would go to. This one down here, this contact person, that's not really used by your members. That's in case we needed to contact somebody if something looked amiss on your site and we needed to know who in your organization should ClubExpress contact. That's where this is entered. And this happens to be the president of the company, but it could be anybody. And so you fill out a bunch of other information. But this is what feeds that first section on the Contact Us page. If we go back to the control panel, and we go to titles down here, this brings up a list of titles. Now, typically, you really should have at least 4 titles. And the reason is that there are 4 roles that are important. So you can add a title, and you type in the name of the title. You can type in an optional email address for that title, and then you can select, if appropriate, any one of these 5 here. So let's take a look at someone, the president. You'll notice that we have these columns here for president, member director, treasurer, webmaster, and data protection officer. So this person here, it shows that they are listed as president. Vice president isn't in any of those roles. The membership director, the person that's called the membership director, it could be the member manager, it could be whatever you call it. It could be the vice president, might be the membership director. There's a yes over here. There's a treasurer here. There's one we call the web wizard here. That's saying it's the webmaster. And this one here is the data protection officer. And so if we look at the edit for the president, it shows the title is the president. And this person has their own email address, but the person who is president changes from year to year. So what they did is they came up with an email address called president at Northwest Balloon Club. So whoever is president at a particular time, they would give them access to that email address. And so emails would get forwarded to them. And it says that the person holding this title serves as club president. Similarly, the membership director, it says this person holding this title serves as membership director. And we have similar things for the webmaster and for the data protection officer. And this becomes useful when, say, sending out a new member confirmation, because it will put in by default the membership director's name, because it'll go and say, well, who is the membership director? And it will actually put it in the email, say, if you have any questions, you can contact the membership director. And the reason why we have these alternate email addresses is that on the contact sheet, which we'll review in a moment, you get to decide when you contact this person who's in this role, are you sending it to the member's email address, or are you sending it to the title's email address? So let's go back here. And so now let's go into contact. So this is the contact page. And so here are the people that we want to represent on the contact page. So we listed a couple of the titles, and we've got a couple that, we have a people person, and we could put in other ones here we want. It could have a event chairperson or fundraiser. Let me just go back to titles for a moment. On titles, they don't have to be for just those role-based ones. So you have safety officer, people person, intern, and these titles are what you will select from in the contact page. So now if we go to the contact page over here, if I want to add a contact, it said, well, which title do they hold? So maybe I want the safety officer, and I would select the member, and let's go say Jenny Cho. And we decide whether or not we want to show this on the contacts page. And if so, do we want to show their phone? And say, yeah, we want to show our phone for members. Do we want to show the email? If I say yes for everyone, that'll be for everyone. And now which email? Do I want to use the member's email or the email that's associated with the title? So like president at Northwest Balloon Clubs, or it could be safety officer. In this case, we'll just use the member's title. And if I click on save, and if I go back to contact us, I think Jenny should show up now. Yes, the safety officer. And we're seeing her email and her phone number because we said that this is available to members when they're logged in. And she should also show up down here as the safety officer. So these are the contacts, and you'll also change the display sequence. So over here, you can say, oh, I want president first, and then maybe I want the safety officer. You just move it up in the list, and then you can, that's the order in which they will appear on the Contact Us page. So
while you're talking about contacts, Alan, one of the questions that came through was, can you have more than one person be a contact or hold a title within your organization? The short answer is you sure can, but the system won't recognize that there are two membership directors, for example. So if you're setting up certain notifications, like for the membership director to get an email when someone joins, our system's only going to notify one of those people. So you can have a couple of people listed if you want more than one person to be a contact to list on that contact page, but there's only one person's information who's going to be inserted into system emails, and one person who the system's going to recognize as that role.
Yeah. So for example, in the system email for a new member confirmation, it should have over here placeholders for the membership director title, the membership director name, the membership director's email and their phone and such. So if these things are entered in here, this will actually get put into the system email that's sent out. And much the same as the club name is here. And then it fills in all the information and then puts in the president's name and the president's title, because it could say, may not be called president, might be called emperor or something like that. So the title and the name, as long as it's in that titles list, is check that, yes, this title is the president. But if there's more than one, it's only going to pick one of them. So yes, you could put it in, but you should not have more than one. Any other questions before we jump on to assigning permissions?
None so far.
So let me go back to the control panel. So that's really about, the general setup and how you set up who gets contacted and what their roles are. But as I mentioned, there are administrators and there are coordinators. We'll get to administrators in a moment, but let's talk about different ways of assigning coordinators. We recently improved the control panel and changed the way it works to make better use of the screen space and such. And so if I click on interests, it'll let me manage the interests. If I come back here and I click on switch to view mode, now if I click on interests, it's not going to let me manage the interests. It's going to open up the interests page, the same thing that members would see. So going back and forth between view mode and edit mode, because currently we're in edit mode, you change here between editing or managing and just viewing what the users would see. Up here, these don't have a user interface, nor do these. So it's just the website modules that have user interface. But for any of these things, you can decide whether or not you want particular modules to be active or whether or not you even want them to show up. For example, if you do not have a business directory, it doesn't have to show here. If you don't have volunteers, it doesn't have to show here. And this is all done via the configure mechanism. So if you click on configure, it's going to configure the items on this tab of the control panel, on the people tab, similarly for the website or the money tab. So if I click on configure, it says, oh, okay, here are all of the functions that could appear on this. And at the moment, you'll see that down at the bottom here, collectibles is currently not only disabled, but it's hidden. So it doesn't even show up on this page. If I take it and I make it active and I save it, and then I close this, now collectibles shows up here. But the reason I want to show you the configure is that for most of these, like if we go, say, to the people manager, you're going to have a coordinators tab. There may be more than one tab, but you're going to have a coordinators tab. And here is one way that you could add coordinators. So if I wanted to go to, say, look for Diaz, I can come over here. And now Manny Diaz is now a coordinator of the people manager, which means that he will have a control panel link. And because he's not an administrator, the only things that will show up on his control panel are the things that he has access to. It will be whatever tabs he's got and whatever items within each tab. And he'll be able to manage people just as an administrator can and have all of the search, and he'll be able to do all the things that an administrator can do because he is an administrator of this particular function, or maybe more than one function, and we'll take a look in a moment about what he's already a coordinator of. But that's one way to assign coordinators. Depending on the module, there may be more than one tab, because here's also how you would configure some of these modules. If it's something that can be put on the menu, the function name is called member sign up, but the menu text, maybe you want to have join now. And then you can decide who it's available to. So every one of these will have at least one and often two tabs. One is to configure the availability of the module. And then, of course, when you go into member sign up, then you can choose all sorts of options. But then you also have coordinators. So that's one way of assigning coordinators, regardless of which tab it is. So if I go to communications tab, we can say, oh, okay, for emailing, well, is emailing available? Who's the coordinator? And so it's the same general technique. And that's a very nice thing about ClubExpress, is once you learn how to do something in one area, usually the same steps are taken to do it in other areas. So the learning curve is very short. If we go to the Club tab, there is an item here that says administrators and coordinators. So when we click on this, it shows that right now only Martin Smith is an administrator. And just like anything else, you can click on add an administrator, search for a name, select it, and then add that person to the list. At the moment, I'm not going to add another administrator because, again, an administrator can do everything. And we have this little favorites thing here, which shows what Martin has selected as favorites. And you may not even notice this, but at the top of the page, next to Martin's name, is favorites. And so Martin has listed, these are 3 things he does all the time. So he wants to be able to jump to the people manager really quickly, or to committees administration, or pending payments. Or if he says, oh, I also want to add the blogs manager, and I'm going to be doing that a lot, so I want to move that up to the top of the list, he can save that. And now when he comes up here, blogs manager goes to the top of the list. So this favorites showed up last year, and a great little tool, because now you don't have to navigate to the control panel to get to these things. These are only pages that are on the control panels, and at the moment it's only for the modules, but it's not for reports. So those are the administrators. And now here are the coordinators. And if I add a coordinator, the first thing it's going to ask is, who are we selecting? What's the member? And you would pick a name, and let's try Barbara Jones. And over here, this is where you would say what Barbara can administer. What is she going to be the manager of? And you can check all in a box here. Or you can uncheck all. You can say, oh, I want that person to be the people manager, and I want her to be able to manage committees, and I want to be able to get these 3 reports, but not this stuff. And so you can pick whatever you want her to be able to do, and you click save. And now we have this list of coordinators, and we can look at what a coordinator is currently coordinator for by clicking on the functions button. So if I click on functions here, we will see that Alice has all of these things enabled for her, and we can change it. She's also coordinating events, and so we can see what she is responsible for. And one of the things that's really a very cool thing is, let's assume that Alice was leaving the organization and you needed to transfer those responsibilities over to somebody. Or you have a new person coming to the organization and you just want to duplicate those responsibilities. What you can do is you can click on Copy Coordinator, and then you select the member, and when you select the member, that member will be in the list here with the same rights, the same privileges of the person you copied from. So this is very, very useful to be able to simply say, okay, we have a new person who's in charge of our money. Let's give that person rights to the money tab. Or this person needs to be able to run reports, and Sally used to do it, and now John is going to handle it. So rather than having to do that manually, you should simply say copy, and you can go from there. Similarly, you can also check to see what people have as their favorites. These are the things that are available, say, to this one person who only has rights to the people. You could actually put it on their favorites for them. So that's a nice thing. Now, that's looking at this list by coordinator. You can also look at it by function. So if we click on View by Function, it will have all of the tabs. And for each one of the tabs, it will show you who are the coordinators. So you can look over here, you can remove somebody as a coordinator, or you can remove all the coordinators in one fell swoop. So you can look at it either from the function standpoint or from the member standpoint. There are a couple of other places on the control panel If we go, say, to the website tab, if we go into custom pages, for any custom page, you can click over here and manage coordinators just for this page. So you could add a coordinator here. Similarly, for photo albums, if we go to photo albums here and you search for photo albums, not surprisingly, you can have a coordinator. So if you have something like a picnic or some sort of an event and you have this page, you can say, oh, I want this person to be able to, or these people to be able to edit that page, but I don't want them to be able to touch any other pages. So they can administer that page. On the People tab, that's the website tab. On the People tab, there are a couple of things. In interests, you can have somebody who is a coordinator of a particular interest. So this is the interest category, say safety. And if I look at the individual interests inside of safety, these are the members. These aren't the coordinators. These are the people that are currently members of this interest group. But if we click on the edit icon, it says, oh, okay, who is the coordinator for this interest? And so you can change to a different member, or you can remove them, or you can add them. So that's another place where you can very specifically set a coordinator for a particular interest, like you could do for a particular web page or photo album. But also down here under people options, down at the bottom of the people options is where you decide whether or not to notify the person that is flagged as the membership director. Remember in the titles, we said, oh, okay, we have this title and here's a person that's in that role. Do we want to notify the membership director when the new member signs up or an existing member renews? So in this case, we would just want the person to be notified every time somebody joins, but not when they renew, because there are hundreds of people in the organization. They just want to know when they join. So that's where you would set that. And then on the communications tab, under email accounts, is where you can have emails that will forward to other emails. So you might have something like president at Northwest Balloon Clubs that'll forward to a particular email address, or your reservations at. So this one we used for email addresses for individual forums. So because on forums, you can have people reply to forums. That's a longer discussion. But here's if you have something that where you're using a particular email address and you want it to forward, like president at Northwest Balloon Clubs, and you want it to forward to a particular person or a particular email list or something like that, you can do that. And you can have up to 5 of them here. And if you need more, contact our customer success team and they can add some more for you. And then last would be in discussion forums. For forums, you can configure email addresses and things like that. Again, there's the tutorial. Actually, there are 3 tutorials on discussion forums, one from the user standpoint, one from the moderator standpoint, and one from the administrator standpoint. And that's where you would decide whether or not the emails can go to list server mode and things like that. So, but this is where you would do that. So if you've got someone's email that you're expecting to go to a particular person and that person leaves the organization, that's the kind of thing that you need to check up on. And that's really the reason for this entire webinar, is to give you an indication of the things you need to do when you have people coming into and leaving your organization. So, Samantha, do we have any questions? I know I've run through this fairly quickly. Do we have any questions? And then we will turn it over to you to share your screen for some tips and tricks that you've come across.
There were a handful of questions just about the contacts. Just a couple of people having some questions regarding title emails versus the member's email. And then we got a lot of really good suggestions. One particular person had mentioned that to address the issue of not being able to associate more than one person with a specific title, they've configured email forwarding on their own end that allows, say, the one person who is associated with the title as membership director on your website to have any notifications forwarded to other members of your organization. So that was a nice little tip that we got from the chat. And if you don't mind, Alan, I would like to share my screen with everyone.
Go ahead.
So a couple of things that I wanted to just point out. Alan did a great job of going through all of the items that you would essentially be touching. And so I'm just going to kind of bring it back around to a little bit of an even bigger picture. So the first thing to talk about are titles and how we've talked about why they're so important, but just reiterating how many places titles will actually show up across your website. So one of the things that a lot of people kind of miss is that you can actually associate titles with your committee members. So when you're taking a look at all of your committees, and I'm just going to show a list of my committees, when you're adding members to a committee, and again, we have a lot of videos that go over creating committees and things like that. So this is just a high level overview. You'll see that even within the committee, we have the name of the member and we also have a title associated with that person. And all of those titles come from the titles that you've configured on that screen within the club tab. So even if those aren't very large roles within your organization, if you have committee chairs or if you have titles and positions within committees, you can create those titles on the title screen and apply them to the committee. And especially if you have your committees page as a front-facing page, you let your members and even non-members see it, you might want to show those people who the committee chairperson is for your events committee. So if they want to contact somebody with some suggestions, they can contact the right person. We talked about system emails. Very many of the system emails that we have, and again, those are in the communications tab, will have tabs that are pulling information, whether it's for your data protection officer, your membership director, your treasurer. All of those items are getting pulled into those system emails. So if you don't have people associated with those titles, the system can't pull contact information into those emails, and your members are essentially left without a way to contact you easily. And then the last, of course, that Alan also touched on is all the notifications that officers within your organization can actually get from your website. So taking a look at people options, for example, even money options, you have the ability to notify your membership director, your treasurer. So if we take a look at towards the middle of the money options page, you can notify your treasurer every time someone makes a payment. Now, of course, for larger organizations, that might be one too many emails, but you have the ability to, again, set up those notifications, but they don't work if you don't apply those titles, and even less so if you don't update them when those rules change within your organization. So we talked about coordinators too and contacts. So whenever you set something up on your site, like a donation, for example, and you're taking a look at that particular fund, you have the ability, if we scroll down, to add a coordinator to that fund. Anytime someone makes a donation to that specific fund, your coordinator gets an email. And you can do that with a lot of other items on your website, like ad hoc forms. If you're using ad hoc forms, be sure to add a coordinator to that particular item. That way, things don't get missed. If there are problems, if someone's having a problem with a form, there's always someone who has eyes on things that are going on your website. The same thing is true for events. We all know that you can add more than one event contact, and you can also make one of those event contacts your primary contact. A primary contact for events is just someone who is going to get a notification when people sign up, register. You can opt to have them be notified whenever someone registers for an event. And you can also opt to have them be the primary contact where their information, again, is inserted into one of those system emails. So,
Samantha, because
yeah,
the multiple contacts for events is a fairly new thing, can you show where that's set up?
I sure can. So if we take a look at some of our events, let's go into just one of ours, the Big Big Bash. And we take a look at the event contacts screen. You can list as many contacts as you need just by selecting the person using our member selector from your membership database. You can list out their responsibilities. So if one person is responsible for event speakers and another person is responsible for registration questions, make sure that you're putting those responsibilities in so that, again, your members know who to contact with their questions. What information you want to show, very similar to deciding if that information is available on the contact us page, and notifying them on registration, and the primary contact being, again, that person whose contact information is shown within reminder emails, registration confirmation emails, all of the emails associated with that particular event that would go out automatically to your members.
And this is particularly useful with the responsibilities because if somebody had like a little league club and this is for a particular game, you could have someone whose responsibility is snacks. So if you're going to bring snacks, talk to this person. And this is, again, a really handy thing. This is one of the reasons we added this fairly recently.
And so, yes, there are a lot of places where you can insert a contact for a specific item on your website. And it just has, again, adds that second or third or fourth set of eyes looking at things on your website, takes some of the responsibility off of yourself and delegate. It's one of my favorite words. Another tip that actually came up in one of the training sessions that I conducted was an issue that a club was having with payments. So you have, of course, your regular name for your club that is displayed on your contact us page. It's displayed all over your website, but your bank account might be associated with a completely different name. And what do you do when members are writing you checks and they're putting the wrong information on them? So right now we're in money options, which you can get to from the control panel in the money tab. And if we scroll down a bit, there's a section called other payment options. So this is a section of text that you can just input that will display on your payment page. So if you have extra instructions for your members, maybe you require them to put their member number in the notes of a check. Maybe you need them to write that check out to a different organization. Maybe it's your parent organization or a sister organization. That's another way that you can make sure that your name, your contact info is correct across your entire website. And then one of the last things that I always like to throw out there as a best practice would be, how do you check and keep track of who has access to what on your site? We have within the website tab a report called Website Security. Website Security is going to give you a list of either everyone who has access to items by function or every member that has access to anything and everything they have access to. So if you kind of think about how when we look at the administrators and coordinators page, it gives you the option to view by function or by member. You can do the same thing with your report. So I'm just running one of the reports again. This is our demo site. So we're going to see a lot of people having access to a lot of different things here. So what I always recommend to anyone that I train is check this report in proportion to how many people you've given access to the back end of anything on your site. So if you're a small organization, you only have maybe 2 or 3 people who have access to anything, whether they're administrators or coordinators, you could probably get by with running the report a couple of times a year, maybe once every 4 or 5 months, just to double check. But if you have maybe more than 5 administrators, if you have more than 4 or 5 coordinators and you're constantly giving access to a lot of people, maybe run the report once a month or every other month, especially if you are a heavily volunteer-based organization where you have a revolving door of volunteers where they're stepping in for a bit to help out, then they step out of a role. Making sure that you keep tabs on who has access to what on your site so that you don't have too many cooks in the kitchen. You don't have someone who is responsible for, let's say, a donation fund and they're no longer with your organization and that role has changed. making sure, again, that you just keep tabs on everything happening on your site so that you don't have people going a little bit rogue or having access to things that they no longer need.
Samantha mentioned that there were some very good suggestions coming in. We will forward those to the development team and the design teams and pass those comments along. As far as I'm concerned, one of the strong points of ClubExpress, and I've mentioned it before, is that a lot of our organizations are organizations with little or no professional staff. And so you have people that are volunteers that are stepping into roles and they're stepping out of roles. Things change over time. One very nice thing about ClubExpress is that you can have as many administrators and as many coordinators as you need. And so just keeping track of these people as their roles change, as the organization changes over time is an important thing. And that's the reason we decided to do this webinar. There's also a shorter tutorial on this, which goes into a subset of the information. Samantha, are there any other questions pending that we need to get to?
If a person has different email addresses for an event, but they've already used another email address and title, can that cause problems? So the email address that is associated with an event contact, for example, is always going to be the member's email address. So whenever you are creating those coordinator roles or contacts for an event or anything like that, it's always going to use that member's email address. So even if that member also happens to be an officer within your organization and their contact us page is associated with a title email address, anything else across the website is going to use that member's email address.
Very good. Well, it looks like we're running up against the clock. We had someone that they enjoyed this webinar. I'm very happy about that. So everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you in the next webinar.